Passover is my middle sister, Ada's special holiday. I'm trying to think of how far back. I think I've been coming here now for 6 or 7 years to Ada's Passover, and she does it very, very traditionally.
Now that my sister Ada is doing Passover, it's fabulous. Even though we live out on Long Island and she lives in Maryland, it's just very special for us to make this long trip and spend the time celebrating the holiday with my sister, my other sister, and friends, and of course our children.
Passover is a wonderful time at my house. I love it. The food is great and the food lasts all week. And it is my very favorite holiday. Passover when I was a kid and Passover in my house are probably two completely different things. Passover when I was a kid didn't have the connotation of fun that it has now. Passover in my house is a lot of fun. It's really like a party. It's like a huge dinner party. It wasn't a huge dinner party when I was a kid. It was a solemn occasion.
I remember Grandpa Oscar coming up the street in East Great Plains, carrying books and walking up the street to do the Seder at our house.
I can't.
And it was just the family.
Where was he
and
coming
Grandpa
from? Walking up the
Hartford.
street. How did he get there?
Bus.
I have no
Probably took a
idea.
bus.
Wow.
Yeah. You don't remember that at all?
Nope.
Boy, I
Absolutely
remember.
not.
I remember the Passover order coming in. I remember Mother making all the food. I remember sitting at that big table in the kitchen in East Great Plains, and Grandpa Oscar leading the Seder, and us all sitting there.
I remember, I have pictures of Mother in my mind.
Cleaning the kitchen.
Cleaning
Yeah.
out the cabinets for Passover.
For Passover, and the Passover order coming in.
I remember the Passover order from Albany. I don't necessarily remember that from Connecticut.
I remember her making a Passover order and going in and picking up the matzah meal, the fish, things like that.
The Seder is a big meal. It's very similar to Thanksgiving in that we have turkey and stuffing, and it's many courses. The first course will be gefilte fish. Again, it's a traditional meal. The second course will be matzo ball soup. And at my Seder, we serve that to everybody. But then the rest of the meal, because we have so many dishes and limited space, we do buffet style. We'll line up all of the dishes and people can just take their plate and serve themselves.
Oh, here it is. Lazy man's gefilte fish. Remove fish from jar. Typical Jewish fixing. Carrots, celery, onions, dill. Goes into everything that makes it smell Jewish.
As young children growing up, I have very fond memories of visiting my grandparents on the farm in Plainfield in Connecticut. And every Sunday afternoon, we would all gather at Grandma's house. And I remember my grandmother as this very fat old lady who never seemed to get away from the stove. She spent the entire time cooking.
There is a feeling of the woman slaves over the stove all day, but I'm so used to doing that, I think if my husband were home and in my way, he'd be in my way. And I don't want him to take over the things that are mine to do that I like doing. Now, I wouldn't mind it if he wanted to clean up, but he doesn't. But there's a big conflict in your feelings about that. I want him to help, but I don't want him to do the things that I want to do.
I think one of the things that, as a family, we've enjoyed and not enjoyed, there's a double edge to this. We have tried to keep as many of my mother's recipes as possible, but we have those recipes because my mother's died. So it's a very special time for us as we go through the old cookbooks and find those recipes that we're going to use. And I can remember sitting on the floor with all of these cookbooks, Jewish cookbooks spread around me, many of them from my mother, and opening them and sitting there and sobbing. Not hysterically, but just sobbing because there were notes in my mother's handwriting. There were recipes that she'd found that she'd tucked into. I mean, I don't think I'd, until a few years ago, really gone through these things. But then I did, and it was such a connection to my mother.
What?
I've got the Seder plate.
Oh, bring it over here.
But I think we
Let's
have to
take a look.
check it because I haven't opened it at all. You know, I was looking in one of the cookbooks that Mother has from a newspaper. Very old, it's yellow. And I know Mother, I know it's Mother's. I know it's Mother's. And it says where everything on the Seder plate is
It's
supposed to be.
wonderful. I love this.
This is for the parsley. That's sharp, that's parsley. That's the sharp green, that's parsley.
I mean, you know, I remember.
No, this one. This one is right here. I'll put it
To join us there for breakfast.
This
He
is
has
the
to be
green,
on the house
this one
here.
goes here. My Seder plate comes from Philadelphia for the holiday and then gets washed up and goes back, and I carefully put it away in its allotted spot at the top of the closet and then bring it back out again each year. Maybe someday I'll do my own Seder, and then it will really, I think, have a very special meaning to me because it will have been a part of a family Seder.
Okay, Brenda, let's take out the silver. Passover definitely is a woman's holiday. The women do the cooking, the women do the cleaning up, the men go to the party store and pick up the tables that have been rented and the dishes that have been rented, and he'll take out the garbage, and he'll carve the turkey, but it's definitely a woman's work. And not that that's a good thing. It should be evenly shared, but it's not. But we've done it so many years this way. It just continues to be done that way.
It's very hard for me to say I like one part more than I like another part. I think when we first sit down at the table and it's pure and nothing's been done yet and everybody's kind of just gently conversing and nothing's really started, and then my brother-in-law starts the ceremony.
Welcome all to our Seder this evening. And we have books that hopefully cover most folks. If not, we're going to share.
Oh, we can share.
Okay. The order of the Seder on page 4 shows we have the Kiddush, wash the hands, eat a green vegetable, symbolically breaking the matzah. We'll do that right half. Passover story, then motzi, a special blessing, use the bitter herb, the matzah together, and then keep your eyes on number 10, because we're in good shape. But we have to go and start from number 1 on page.
The Seders themselves are quite different because A, they're more modern, B, there's English interspersed with the Hebrew, and C, a lot is left out.
The next page, I'll show you the preparation of the table and the Seder plate, which has a rolling egg. The rosette, which is a sweet, the horseradish to represent the bitter herbs, the shank bone, lettuce, and some parsley. Oh, we know what we're up to now. We have to
Add the 4 questions.
ask.
Alrighty, and you get my lovely voice. Manish tonight halayla hazeh miko halaylet miko halaylet shevacho halaylet anyochlin hametz matzah hametz.
4 questions are asked at the beginning of the Seder service by the youngest person who, in theory, is the most inquisitive of, why are we doing this? Why is this night different from all other nights? They should be read in Hebrew, but if the youngest person can't read in Hebrew, then you can read them in English, and perhaps somebody else can read them or sing them in Hebrew. And the whole Seder, as you go around the table, that's the answer to the questions that are asked.
It's the only way.
He's all right.
Every
Yeah, she pulls it out. That was terrific.
You're very proud of yourself.
Okay. All right, page 9 in the middle. We're going to do this responsive reading around in English predominantly, but if you feel that you know a few words in there, that's fine. We were slaves of Pharaoh in Egypt, and the eternal our God brought us out from there with a strong hand and an outstretched arm. Now, if God had not brought out our forefathers from Egypt, then even we, our children, and our children's children might still have been enslaved to Pharaoh in Egypt. And the more one tells of the departure from Egypt, the more is he to be praised.
It is told that Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Joshua, Rabbi Elazar, the son of Azariah, Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Tarfon sat all night and made Pharaoh the story of the departure from Egypt. Toward the morning, their students came to tell them that it was time for morning prayers.
Rabbi Elazar, the son of Azariah.
What I like is that we are all a part of it. We all take a speaking part. We all read from the Haggadah and talk about what it all means. Being able to participate in it. You know, there was a time when women just did not, and now I can. And that's important. I like that part of it.
But all the days of your life includes also the time of the Messiah.
Blessed is God who gave the Torah. Passover always falls very close to Easter. So there's always a connection, at least there was always a connection in my mind between the Jewish holiday and the Christian holiday.
Not even know how to ask a question.
I remember the Easter celebration among non-Jews as being very important. And I remember in those years that the kids all dressed up. They all got new outfits. And there was such a thing as an Easter parade. They went to church in the morning, and then they all walked somewhere. I was never clear where, but it was a very important day, and they all had a fabulous meal.
All kinds of candy and chocolate bunnies and beautiful baskets from Grammy and Grampy, their grandparents, and from their parents, and we were stuck with matzah.
And this matzah which we eat, what is the reason for it? Is because there was not time for the dough of our ancestors in Egypt to become leavened before the ruler of all, the Holy One, blessed be He, revealed Himself to them and redeemed them.
Blessed art thou, eternal our God, ruler of the universe, who made us holy with his commandments and commanded us concerning the eating of matzah.
All right, how about I pass around some matzah?
Passover really celebrates the exodus of the Jews from Egypt. And they left in such a hurry that the bread didn't have time to rise, and that's why we eat unleavened bread or matzah at Passover time.
Eat the matzah, yeah. All right, everyone raise their wine glass and we say, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri ad kafanu. Drink the second cup of wine. Thus we have the 10 plagues that the Holy One, blessed be He, brought upon the Egyptians in Egypt, and they are as follows. We'll do all 10. No, this is a lot, all right. All right, Dam.
Blood.
Yitzfaradea.
Frost.
Kinim.
Vermin.
Arov.
Beast.
Dever.
Cattle disease.
Shihin.
Oils.
Barad.
Hail.
Erbe.
Locusts.
Passover at our house, because my father was the oldest of the children, Grandpa Oscar would come and he would lead the Seder at our house. And it started at sundown and it was conducted in Hebrew and it went on for hours and I never understood a word, and we ate late in the evening, and it really was a big event in the family. They were I think they were very religious. We grew up in a kosher home. My parents kept separate dishes, celebrated all of the holidays, and always went to temple. And that only stopped when we moved to Cleveland.
When we moved to Cleveland, they did not live, my parents did not live near stores where she could buy kosher food, particularly the butcher. So little by little by little, she weaned herself away from the kosher home, and I remember her being very, very upset about that.
Although we didn't keep kosher, we probably more or less obeyed dietary things. It was difficult for my mother not to do that. She probably came out of an Orthodox household. And so for her generation, it was difficult not to obey dietary rules. I think with each successive generation, it becomes easier and easier to move away from them, as we have in my generation.
So we still kept a kosher style home, but we didn't have, it wasn't strictly kosher. But I remember from them, like, I would never have a glass of milk with a meat sandwich or anything like that, and it was just, that would be anathema because it's something that we didn't do when we were growing up.
I've never kept a kosher home, but I can remember being very aware of dietary things and not being comfortable for the longest time eating things that I knew in the back of my mind were forbidden.
Milhedick and Fleischik or something.
Yeah, right. Now that part didn't bother me, but it took me forever to eat shellfish.
Really?
Would not eat shellfish.
Oh,
for
but
the
you know what
longest
I
time.
remember about shellfish? My birthday present used to be going out for dinner, and we would go to Howard Johnson's out
That was the
by
big
Ocean
deal.
Beach, and Daddy would always get lobster. It's a kosher guy.
You remember this?
Always, he had loved lobster.
But I had a
Yes.
thought about something that I remembered, and I just lost it. It'll
there it
come
goes
back
again.
to me. Yeah.
I don't remember. I still.
Oh,
I mean,
Daddy-
like,
Daddy
I'll do
loved
bacon, but I
lobster.
won't do.
Oh, I know. I was just going to say that. I can't cook pork in the house.
No.
Only foods that are marked kosher for Passover are used during Passover. It sort of makes the holiday a little more meaningful because you feel a little more observant. Being Jewish when I was a child and not living in what's called the Jewish neighborhood definitely made me feel like an outsider, like I didn't belong.
I never felt good about being Jewish, to be perfectly honest. No, I never felt
It
good.
made me feel different.
Yes, I did. I felt left out.
We
I
weren't
felt different.
encouraged to feel good about being Jewish.
Or feel proud. None of that.
No.
I think we were encouraged to kind of hide it and not talk about it because being Jewish in the areas that we lived in clearly was somebody different.
Although they were conservative Jews, they never really lived in neighborhoods where they were surrounded by many Jewish people, if at all. And my mother was always unhappy about that. She always felt like a fish out of water.
Growing up, my mother always wanted us to do things that she didn't do. She wanted us all to be teachers because teachers could work when their children were in school and they were off in the summer, and then if your husband died, you would have something to do and you still could be around when your children were home. So it was kind of a mantra.
Basically, my choices were teacher or nurse, not necessarily in that order. And it was always said to me that if for some reason your husband left you or your husband died, you'd always have something to fall back on and be able to earn money. It was never you could be a doctor or you could be a lawyer. It was nurse or teacher.
I don't have any role models growing up of women who were achievers. Any role models I have come from books or from reading about them in magazines or in the newspapers, but not anybody that I know who went to college and achieved. In my generation, I know many, many women who are super achievers, and so my daughters have many role models who are women, not just men.
For me, reading Betty Friedan's book, The Feminine Mystique, in 1963 was an earth-shattering experience. It changed my life. I was certainly a stay-at-home mom, but I did read that book at that time, and it made such a powerful impact on me that I got up off the kitchen floor, stopped baking chocolate chip cookies every week, and I went back to school.
My mother was at my graduation from law school, and it was a wonderful feeling knowing that my mother was watching me achieve something that she thought was impossible.
I have two daughters, and they're both adults, and they're both very independent, and they have wonderful careers, and they're definitely their own thinkers. But because I have come back into the fold or discovered my religion in later life, I'm trying to convince Susan and Barbara that it's so wonderful that they should do the same thing, but they are not quite ready yet.
My children and my nieces have all had different experiences. I have one daughter who's very close to Judaism and quite observant, and the other one who likes the food, but she couldn't care less about the ritual. That's for now. She may change later.
And then on top of everything, she wanted to have like saying quotes and everything like that.
We have one request for Diana.
Yeah, I thought.
I think you probably all know it.
Yes. Ili hotzi hotzi enu mi Mitzrayim hotzi enu mi Mitzrayim Dianu Dianu Dianu
I think naturally, people and their religion change that relationship as they go through life. When you're a child, you're involved in your religion because you're learning about it. That's when you go to Sunday school or Hebrew school. And then as you're a young adult or you're raising a family, you seem to get away from it. As your own children reach the age where they need to be taught, then you get back into a religious atmosphere, and maybe you stay after that time, or maybe you distance yourself a little bit and then you get back into it as you age. But I think it's kind of a normal pattern with how people relate to their religion.
Well, here's the new. I'm going to pass out the new song.
Take one and pass it around. And this is a song we're going to sing to the tune of These Are Some of My Favorite Things.
Oh, that's what I was going to show you.
Did you get it on email?
Yeah. That's so funny. This is what I was talking about. Oh, yeah.
Everybody have a copy? Yeah, there's good. Okay, so somebody who can sing like Barbara can get us started.
Cleaning and cooking and so many dishes. Out with the hummus, no pasta, no knishes. Fish that's gefilte, horseradish that stings.
The most important thing about Passover is having people in the house. Having my children home and having my family here and just celebrating it with a lot of people.